right, so in StatCrunch, again, there'll be a separate PDF posted, and we'll talk a little bit about this in class. So when we're doing our problems using our confidence interval for our population proportions in StatCrunch, we're going to go to our stats menu, we're going to select proportion stats, we're going to select one sample with summary, we're going to enter our number of successes and number of observations, and there's a little note here, if that's not given, our number of successes is going to be x equals p hat times n. If we look back to a previous example on page 26, example 3, our n is our sample size, and then down here, notice that our number of successes are n times p hat. That's the other number that we're going to enter into StatCrunch. So just kind of keep that in mind, that ties back to this example on page 26 in your notes. Right. Then we're going to select confidence interval. We're going to enter the confidence level. So what level are we looking for? We're going to select compute, and then we're going to get a lower limit and upper limit of our confidence interval. All right, so according to the Gallup poll taken in East Germany, when 435 adults were asked whether they were thriving, struggling, or suffering, 60% said that they were struggling. Find the 90%, 95%, and 99% confidence interval for the proportion of people in East Germany who say that they are struggling. How do these confidence intervals compare to one another? So we're going to use StatCrunch to work through these because we're asked to find 3 different confidence intervals. So instead of finding 3 different margins of error and then 3 different answers, we're just going to use StatCrunch to compare these. All right, so our population is the population of East Germany. Population of East Germany. Our lowercase n is our sample size. So there were 435 people sampled. Our p hat, 60% or 0.60. Our confidence levels, we're going to be looking for a 90%, 95%, and 99%. And what we're looking for and what we want to know are actually those confidence intervals. The confidence intervals still are going to be of the form p hat plus or minus m. The only difference is we're not actually going to be finding our m values outright. So we're just looking in this case for our answers to include our confidence intervals. But again, StatCrunch is going to give us more information than what we're going to be using here. When we're plugging these into StatCrunch, remember that we are going to use our sample size, our n, which is going to be our number of people surveyed. And then in this case, we're skipping our conditions, but do remember that we are going to think about our number of successes. So in this case, in our condition, our x value that we're going to be looking at is the number of successes, which is p hat times n. Which if we go through and we calculate this out for our problem, because we're going to need it for StatCrunch, we're going to take 0.60 times our sample size of 435 to get an x value of 261, which we are going to plug into StatCrunch. Right? So we're not going to find our standard error, but that is something that would be given to us in StatCrunch. We're not going to find our margin of error, again, because we're using StatCrunch. But what we are going to use, again, as we're using StatCrunch, is we're going to use that n is the 435 people that were sampled, and then our x was our p hat times n, which we just calculated was 261. So that is something that we do want to mention. Okay. Then if we go through and we start plugging these different values into StatCrunch, our n and our x aren't going to change. The only thing that's going to change are our confidence intervals. Right? So for 90%, the confidence interval is 0.561 to 0.639. For 95%, the confidence interval is, again using StatCrunch, 0.554 to 0.646. 99%, the confidence interval is 0.539 to 0.661. Now, if we compare these three different confidence intervals, notice that here we go from about 56% to about 64%, about 55.5 to 64.5, about 54 to 66. So as the level of confidence increases, the width of the interval also increases. This interval is the widest, that interval is the smallest. So we're just going to make a couple little notes here in our conclusion. The 99% confidence interval is the largest. Of the three found. We could also state that the 90% is the smallest. So kind of depending on what we want. So we could say that the 90% is the smallest. We could also say that as the level of confidence increases, the width of the interval also increases. And then what we see down at the bottom here is just kind of a visual representation of that last sentence. In general, as the level of confidence increases, the width of the confidence interval also increases. So that's something, again, you might run into in a homework problem here and there. So just kind of pay attention to that. And then as you're going through these, start to feel comfortable both calculating our confidence intervals by hand and using StatCrunch to assist us in those calculations as well.